Now that we've taken a closer look at the first 50 pieces out of the 281 pieces in the ultimate schematic, let's take a look at the next 10 pieces, pieces 51 to 60. And those pieces are in the second doorway that we must go through. Remember, there are two doorways we must go to solve all of our problems that are 100% within our control. The first doorway is so we can find the knowledge we need. The second doorway so we can apply the knowledge we need. And in that doorway are obstacles. The 7 wellness factors that were in the first doorway strike twice. So the 15 to 21 is also in the second doorway, and I assign them whole numbers because they're so important. And those are pieces 51 to 57. And then piece 58 is a problem of knowledge where we have no control whatsoever, like bad luck. 59 would be a problem of knowledge where we have limited control, like carelessness. And then piece 60 would be all of those sources of false knowledge that also strike twice. And I didn't assign them whole numbers, and I even have not even assigned them sub numbers, which I could. Remember, there's millions of pieces within this puzzle. I could say, okay, let me add 14 more pieces onto this and make it 295 pieces. But that, where do we stop? The point here is I didn't assign them whole numbers for a reason. They're not as important as the wellness factors, because the wellness factors not only can strike twice, but our belief system, and therefore our performance can actually be enhanced if we can turn those obstacles where we're unwilling into facilitators where we are willing. So if you want to take a quick look at the performance equation, to digress for a moment, our performance equals our plus C and minus C equals 22 to 35, that's our knowledge, limited by or divided by pieces 2 to 21, as well as pieces 51 to 60, and then that's going to be multiplied by pieces 51 to 57, because we can turn those obstacles into facilitators. But right now we have to make it through the doorway first, and when we do, we get into the second stage of knowledge. So when we look at the first 50 pieces, those were in the first stage of knowledge, or at least 31 of them were, and then 19 were in the first doorway, and then there's 21 pieces within pieces. That's why there's 40 obstacles altogether. And this can get real complicated if we want to, but let's make it simple. The best way to deal with all these obstacles is to test an idea as time has come. So if you've already done that, then this isn't of any concern to you. But if you're still debating on whether or not this is something you want to do, and you want to try to objectively evaluate all this, take a look at what you're up against. You have all these sources of false knowledge that are making you think a certain way, and these wellness factors that are also determining your performance. So the two doorways we have to go through will get us to the second stage of knowledge. And now the pieces that I showed you so far will come into the second stage. But before I talk about how those pieces go to the second stage, let me tell you about 19 more pieces that I hid in piece number 2. Remember, I hid 57 pieces altogether. I've assigned whole numbers 120, but there's really 177 pieces, so there's 57 pieces that are actually part of this schematic where everything fits. But I hid those 57 pieces. The first 19 are in piece number 2. That's where I hid the 14 needs, 12 and 2. And then I also hid pieces 41 to 43, the 3 ways we correct 5 mistakes. And pieces 44 and 45, the 2 forms of consequences, the knowledge and the experience. But I didn't hide the 5 things we mastered because they're too important. Just like pieces 83.1 to 83.5 were too important to list as sub-numbers, and I gave them whole numbers 95 to 99, pieces 46 to 50 are also too important, and I set them out. Remember, when I finally assigned whole numbers, or a universal numbering system, to my schematic, I waited till I felt like I had all the pieces I didn't want to look at hidden in puzzles, or hidden in pieces, or sub-puzzles. And that way I'd only identify the most important pieces, so it'd be simpler. And that's what I did. So that's why I identified pieces 46 to 50, especially piece 46, because that's where we look at the fall of mankind and we think it's an art. Of all the false beliefs we have, this is the one that's killing us. And it's the hardest one to wrap our brain around. And again, how do you deal with that? Well, that's where you test an idea as time has come. So we start off with 46 to 50, we get the 95 to 99, that gets us to 103, which these are problems that are within our control. When we look at the negative C box of problems, in order to work backwards to solve our problems, the first thing we do is we make it simple. We say our problems are either 100% within our control or they're not 100% within our control. 103 are problems that are 100% within our control. And then when you look at all those problems, all together, the 103s are the hugest number. And we don't want to look at the details. That's why my 6-box system can make things simple. There are hundreds of thousands of pieces within 103. Let's not look at any of them. And I've actually only hid 19 pieces that trace back to what's in the second stage of knowledge. which has to do with the 14 needs and the 5 things we mastered. Especially if we made bad applications, that's how we get on the 103. So we work backwards, we make it simple, knowing that we can solve problems if they're 103s, if they're within our control, by changing what we do, our lifestyle choices. But we can't do that unless we have the right knowledge. And that's where piece 46 is getting us in trouble, as well as 46 to 50. Remember, we cannot learn anything when we think we already know. And that's the problem with false knowledge. The first step is to admit we don't know. And the only way to even overcome that is to test an idea as time has come. Again, I keep coming back to this. Hopefully you're already doing this. And if you're doing it, you're probably not aggravated by me repeating myself over and over and over, because you have to understand, and I'm sure you do by now, that the people we want to do this the most are the ones that might have to hear this 50 times. That's why we pile drive and pile drive and pile drive and tell it over and over and over, over and over and over. That's why every video I'm doing right now is to help you understand this is something you have to do. And in the meantime, each video I do, I'll give you more information to help motivate you. In this video, we're understanding that our willingness factors strike twice. Denial strikes twice. I love that. I've never heard anyone ever say it before, except when I heard it myself say it. But all these willingness factors strike twice. And the best way to overcome all of them is apathy. Remember, we have addictions, denial, habits, and apathy. That would be 15, 16, 17, 18. But then when we go to the second doorway, we have 51, 52, 53, 54. So it's 18 and 54. 18.1 to 18.4, and then 54.5 to 55.7. So what else is in that second doorway? We've already talked about it, but to remind yourself, the big one is piece 54.5. That's where we're unwilling to apply what we know. But the best thing about this is you don't have to believe anything. Just test an idea as time has come. And then 54.6 is where we're unwilling to commit to this long term. And then 54.7 is where we're unwilling to share this information. Remember, this is the most important piece of the hero's journey. Once we're on the hero's journey, we can't do anything unless we get on the hero's journey. And I realize not everyone's ready for this message. So if you're not ready, don't worry about it. Hopefully we'll reach the tipping point before you know it, and you can be the second wave of heroes. And if you don't make it then, don't worry, you'll got it made, because then we'll do everything for you. And even though you're not going to want to do it, you're going to be glad you did once you did it. Now that sounds pretty extreme, but who knows how things are going to finally be once we get to that point. I can only just try to imagine how we'll deal with that in the future. And I've already said this before, is that it's almost a waste of time to project too much in the future, because there's no telling how we're going to start functioning as a species once we correct these simple mistakes and get reconnected. The biggest problem is we're disconnected and we're always being distracted. So how are you going to overcome all of this? There's only one way to deal with being distracted. That's get reconnected. How do you do that? That's the first of my 3-step process. And it does it faster than any other method. And allows you to see a light bulb moment within a week, an aha moment within several months. And that's the most important part of my whole message, is you have to have a brand new reference in order to challenge all those references that support your current belief system, your current way of life. Most of us have been taught the wrong things, and it's part of who we are. It's not easy to break away from the stream of the crowd. That's why we just glide along. But not all of us are in the middle of the stream. So I'm mainly appealing to the stragglers on the side that are ready to jump off and go the other direction. You guys are the trim tabs. Right now, as I'm speaking as of today, that's who I'm talking to now. 2 years down the road, as you're listening to this video, hopefully we've already made it. But if not, we still need trim tabs. If we haven't reached the tipping point, we still have to get there. So this is something it's an ongoing grassroots movement. It's a bottom-up solution. We are sick individually. Every system is sick, so there's no system that can solve our problems. It's got to be a bottom-up. It will never be a top-down. And the only thing we can do is to drastically change the condition of our 4 current status factors. And that's what satisfying 2 groups of needs will do. When you satisfy 2 groups of needs, you'll become the best that you can be. And then you'll finally have the right mentality where you realize, my gosh, I feel one with everything now. I really want everyone else to feel this good, because I can understand what would happen if they did. It pains me to watch some of you people crawling around in pain. I see your pain. You can barely walk, some of you guys. Our dietary mistakes are reflected in our flesh. We can't hide from our mistakes. Look at the vast majority of the elderly in America. You guys are failures at living. And you did it ignorantly. You didn't know any better. You did the best you could, but you didn't know any better. Now I'm offering you knowledge so you can know better. And I wish you guys would be the trim tabs, but I know that you're going to be the heavy wave of second waves that's going to jump on board once we finally reach the tipping point. In fact, every one of you guys are going to jump on board. I know it. But right now, the very small percentage of you guys seem to be willing. Prove me wrong. If you guys change, you'll look better than your children. I swear to God. You'll look better, you'll feel better, you'll act better. Everyone that sees you two together will go, oh my God, what did Grandpa do? Look at Grandma, my God. Didn't know she had cheekbones. Didn't know her skin could glow. I'm telling you, my friends, most of our problems are 100% within our control. And the solution is a lot simpler than we think. So I could continue on and talk about more pieces at this time. We've looked at the first 60 pieces. I guess I might as well go ahead and show what happens in the second stage of knowledge. I already alluded to it a moment ago. I was thinking about saving that for the next one, but let's talk about it. Remember, we have 12 essential needs and 2 additional temporary needs, pieces 22 to 35. When we satisfy those needs, we become 61 to 74. And then there are 5 things we mastered, 36 to 40. And when we make good applications, we get 75 to 79. Those 19 pieces I condensed into 101. So now we have 101.61 to 101.74, or actually 79, when you include the 5 good applications. And I did that on purpose, so it'd be simple when we look at the C box. We only have within our control and outside of control. And remember, when we look at the problems we have, there are hundreds of thousands of problems in 103, and that's how we get lost down the rabbit hole. The devil's in the details. Yeah, that's what they want us to do. Look for logical fallacies and systems with invalid structures. Don't put the cart before the horse. Don't be guilty of Mona's ponens. Work backwards. Take responsibility and realize most of your problems are within your control. And why would you not want to test this out and prove it to yourself? Because if we don't satisfy these needs, we slide down and get those. We get 81 to 94. And if we make 5 bad applications, or any bad applications, or the first 5 at least, we get 95 to 99. And then that's what's responsible for most of our 103s. So I explained in the ultimate schematic how we have gateways and wormholes and doorways. 6 doorways, 4 gateways. The wormholes are interesting. I've already talked about 4 of the wormholes. That's where we have a causal loop and a knowledge loop on the wrong path and on the right path. So there's 2 and 2. And it took me several years before I realized, well, wait a second, there's 4 more wormholes. And that's because I realized we slide up to 112 and we get a 103 in limbo. That's where we are making a mistake, but we get a positive effect from it. This is one of the ways we really get tricked. But when we have a ripple effect there, when the effect becomes a cause, it doesn't become a positive cause, it goes back down. So now we get 119 and 120. 119 is a negative causal loop by going up 112, and this is what I call a false interpretation. And then we also perpetuate false knowledge because we think we're doing something right. We're getting a positive effect, but it perpetuates false knowledge, so that's 120. There's 8 wormholes, pieces 113 to 120. There's 113 and 114. If we look at, and actually I guess I gotta go backwards if I'm going from the third stage, the second stage to the first stage. Remember, there's a ripple effect. Whatever we get has a cause and effect. And we get the 113, 114, 150, 150, and then the 115, 116 is where we slide down. And then anytime we have a negative effect, it's always going to be a 115 down in here. But then the 116, we can learn from our mistakes. So 116, interesting, comes back up and goes back to the plus A box of knowledge. So there are 2 ways we can get a 45. 114 and 116. 114 is when we complete the positive knowledge loop. We satisfy our needs. We get a 101. And then that ripples back around as 114. And that's what feeds 45, the experience of the consequences. But then we have 116 also. Because we can correct mistakes and still have a negative effect. We can have a cleansing reaction, which is actually where 108 comes into play, where we go from plus C to negative C. But we can also slide down 111, and then we have a negative effect. But we can learn from our mistakes. If we don't satisfy our needs, or even slide down 109, if we know we did it, we can slide down 109, end up with a negative effect, but now it doesn't ripple back around and perpetuate false knowledge unless we just don't know that we we're not satisfying one of our needs. So that's piece 116. So once again, 113, 114, then we slide down 115, or 115, 116, and then on the negative side we have a negative 117, 118, and we slide up and we come back down 119, 120. Sounds complicated, and if you want to try to understand what I'm saying better, look at the ultimate schematic. I did a video on this. A good way to explain this is if I had a sheet of paper, as I also show in the ultimate schematic video, and if I took that paper and I rolled it around, you can see how the effects on one side would come back and circle around and hook up to the beliefs, which is how they claim, or that's how they try to describe a wormhole in space, where space folds upon itself and that's supposed to create a wormhole. Well, think of my ultimate schematic on a sheet of paper like a globe, and then roll the edges around like a cone, just like you could roll the map around, and all of a sudden you got the two places connecting. That's kind of how the causal loop and the knowledge loop works. I'm trying to work on how to illustrate that, and I'm not having any success myself. I've requested the help from friends, and hopefully they can come through on this. And the best thing of all, you don't have to understand it. I'm only offering this information so that you can understand the structure in which I'm trying to come from. Remember, when you use logic, there are two criteria that must be met. The contents, the specifics, the details must be accurate. There's no logical fallacies in those, and that's the train. But then the structure must be valid. And the structure is the tracks, and the tracks is always one way. That's why I'm using two sequential ordered pairs in my special teaching tool, which is in effect 3 stages of knowledge. That way we can make sure we don't get tricked and take the first step in the wrong direction. So what's the best way not to get tricked? Test an idea as time has come. Do the first of my 3-step process so you can see what you're missing, and then be in a better position to try to put a dent in these 5 main mistakes, and good luck. And do we have to correct every one of them to the nth degree and be perfect? I don't know. It kind of seems foolish not to. And perhaps that's a question we must ask once enough of us do it, that everyone's doing it, and then we'd be like every other animal that wouldn't think twice about getting the best it could do. Imagine wildebeest coming out into a pasture and they all run to the bad grass or go to the bad water. Doesn't make sense, does it? Every other species on this planet strives to thrive, or thrives to strive, and we're not doing that. Mainly because we don't know what we're missing. Mainly because society attacks early when the individual's helpless. We start our journey off in life with false knowledge because of our traditions. And the best way to deal with that problem of knowledge is the same way to deal with every other problem of knowledge. Test an idea as time has come. So once again, if you're on the hero's journey, if you've already done this, keep gathering data, become well versed in knowing how to explain this with people. Share my special teaching tool to help show the flaws in the systems that are in charge. Once we can exclude the impossible, which is all the systems in charge, then we got to exclude their bullshit reasoning why what I'm trying to say is not true. And then once you do it, you'll be able to believe only your own experience. So get excited, document what you do, journal everything, share it on YouTube, and tell everybody, I'm in for a treat if you do it too, or you're in for a treat if you do it too. I'm already having a treat. It's time for you to